Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Joining me for today's episode is Marek Wasilewski. Marek is the Vice President of Sales Americas and Latin America for Extreme Networks. Marek, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for inviting me to be the guest on the podcast.
I'm excited for today's discussion.
I am. I was genuinely honored, and I'll admit a little anxious after hearing how sharp and insightful your previous guests were. How well I'd keep up with them, but
you'll do fine. You will do fine. I'm not worried about that at all. Let's go and jump right in. So, Marek, you've had a lot of success in your career. I mean, if you're listening, obviously, if you're listening, check out his LinkedIn profile. You'll understand why we invited Marek onto the show. If you had to go back looking at your career and kind of boil it down into three things that have really driven and led to your success, what would those three things be?
Well, it's sometimes difficult to try to boil them down to 3, 5, or even 10. But if I had to really give it a good go, I would say the first one would most probably this relentless hunger of always wanting more, always chasing more, always willing to, I'm going to say, throw myself in front of the bus and see where it hurts. And that's something that, I've ultimately done, I think, from a very, very early days of my sales career. The second one I'd most probably say is mentors. Building relationships, but building real relationships. And there's a difference, right? I mean, obviously, when you're growing up as a young kid, everybody wants to be popular. But as you get older, you start to realize that it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So for me, being a mentor and having those mentors in my life really, really accelerated my growth in my career. And the third one, maybe taking ownership, accountability, right? That's one of those things that I think as you get older, once again, you start to realize that no matter which way you look at it, it really the buck stops here, right? So those were the things I would say. If I had to nail them down to those three, those would be the ones.
Yeah, I like those. Those are good. That's a good list of three. How did you get into sales? Was this something you thought you would be doing when you were younger, or, how did you get started?
Nobody grows up saying, I want to be a salesman.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I left school, and believe it or not, I graduated and wanted to become a fashion designer out of it.
No kidding.
Really, and that was what I did in my undergrad, and I went into it, and I had a fair amount of success in it. But obviously, as I got deeper and deeper into it, everybody sees the glamour, at least the forefront. But as I got deeper into it, I started to realize that it wasn't really something that I was enjoying. It wasn't going to be something that I was going to enjoy, period. And I realized very quickly that sales was something that I've done most probably from the age of about 16. I had my first job selling selling things in a supermarket or in a shop. And then later, as it evolved and I became a student, I ended up working for a contact center. And that's really where I cut my teeth in terms of sales. And yes, I was one of those guys that was selling timeshares during back then. And I was also one of those guys that sold, novelty memberships and life insurance and death policy insurance and all of those things. And that was really the introduction for me into the world of sales. Was it glamorous? Absolutely not. But that's really what got me into it.
That I imagine was quite a learning ground for you, selling those kinds of things that not all that easy to sell, right?
None of them are. None
No,
of them are. And
no.
especially when they have got, a stigma associated with them.
Yeah,
Even way back then, selling, timeshare. Well, how many people got burned through that, right? But here you were trying to, dial by numbers, as they say, and try to get through as many as you possibly could. But if I look back on those days, it's also one of those things that gave me that extra layer of skin, right? To be able to take the rejection, to be able to deal with it, to be able to realize that really it's just something that happens, and you could potentially be one call away from success.
yeah. That's I mean, it sounds like that's probably the takeaway lesson you have. You're one call away from your next sale. You just have to keep going.
You've got no option, right? You
Right.
are, and then way back then, even then, contact centers became more innovative. So the latest thing was, predictive dialing. So you had your customers already lined up, and people were waiting on you to speak to them. So before you even had an opportunity to really take a breath and absorb what was just said in the previous call, you were already on to the next one.
Yeah.
And I think that is that kind of a mentality, and I think that kind of an approach also ultimately gets you through the day, right? Because you don't have enough time to process that negativity, so you just deal with it by actionable items, thinking, okay, well, this is the one, the next one is the next one, right? So, yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah. So how going from there, that beginning, what was your next big step in your sales career?
Well, you know what? Actually, what happened is I do remember. So we moved. I've moved quite a bit in my life, right? So I was born in Poland, then moved to Austria, then my parents moved to South Africa, and then from South Africa, I moved to the UK, and in the UK, I moved to the US, and I've been fortunate enough to sort of experience hands-on work, if you like, in across 5 different continents, and lived in 3 of those. But as I looked at my career, sort of leaving my, post my graduation, kind of got into trying to get into the fashion industry and then try to get into sales, I actually stumbled. I stumbled upon a company, a telco, if you like, in the UK, which way back then was one of the largest ones. And didn't initially get into sales after I came out of the contact center, and I immersed myself in the technology. I wanted to learn everything that there was about the frame relays, the ISDN, the ATMs, and SDH, PDH, and pardon the acronyms, but all of those things. And I started to really enjoy it, but realized very quickly that what I was missing was the human interaction that I enjoyed so much during my sales days. Because when you're an engineer and when you're going through product knowledge, majority of the time you're spending behind the screen tapping away on the keyboard trying to make things work. So I kind of moved away from sales initially, went into very sort of a detailed engineering and technical side of the field, and then moved back into sales. And within the first year, I achieved the President's Club and absolutely realized that this is what I was meant to do. And I kind of just grew from there, I guess.
Hey, we're taking a quick break to thank you for listening to and supporting the Sales Lead Dog podcast. I want to take a moment and tell you about my book, CRM Shouldn't Suck. If your CRM feels more like a black hole for data than something that actually helps your team sell, you're not alone. The book breaks down why CRMs fail for so many businesses and what you can do about it. No fluff, just real strategies that work. So go to crmshouldn'tsuck.com to order your free copy right now. That's right, we're giving it away. And while you're there, take 2 minutes to check out the CRM Impact Score. It's a quick diagnostic that shows you how your CRM is really performing, where it's helping you and where it's hurting you. You'll get a personalized report with clear, actionable next steps you can start right away to maximize your CRM investment. We've also got blogs, videos, and a bunch of other resources to help you finally get the results you were promised when you bought your CRM. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of Sales Lead Dog. Okay, let's get back to this episode of the Sales Lead Dog podcast. So what were the keys to that level of success, achieving that level of success in that role?
In the sales role specifically?
Yeah. To get to President's Club that early on, what was behind that, do you think?
Well, I think it was, once again, if I look at those three things, first of all, it was that relentless hunger. I wanted, and it stayed with me and it still is with me, unfortunately. And for those that know me, chaos theory rules my life. And I do really believe that when I go after something, I go after it wholeheartedly, right? And sometimes, there are consequences with it too. But so relentless hunger was absolutely one of those. Then the other one was consistency, right? I always had a plan in terms of what I was going to do within a day. And I was extremely focused on what I wanted to achieve in that particular day, in that particular week, and in that particular month, and so on and so forth. And then I just got into this repetitive discipline, if you like, to make sure that each and every single day there was a high level of activity associated behind it. And it worked, I guess.
Yeah, obviously. So now it's time, you're having success in sales and leadership opportunity comes your way. Talk a minute about that transition for you into leadership. Why did you make the jump? And, was it what you expected?
Oh, no. I don't think it was anywhere close to what I expected. It was actually something that was offered to me multiple times, even during the days of working in the engineering field. One of the things that, as I said, I always kind of threw myself at it. I was always the guy on the front line that was willing to throw himself in front of the bus and go, "Hey, I'm happy to do that. I want to go after it," or "Yeah, we'll sort that out." And that kind of approach, I think eventually some people higher up the chain started to notice that, I've got that relentless hunger. I've got that sort of an aspiration to grow. And then, maybe it is a cliched approach, but I was one of the top sales guys, and they made one of the top sales guys a leader, right? And then I stumbled. I fell flat on my face multiple times. And I know you enjoy the term because I've heard previous podcasts from you, but falling on the face is something that I've done so many times, and I've been bruised in so many different ways. But I think each time that happened, I've realized and learned from that particular experience.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I think sometimes that's the best teacher. It's not always the easiest teacher. I mean, obviously it's not. You're falling on your face, it hurts.
Yeah.
But you remember those lessons.
Oh, without
right?
a doubt.
It's like, if I don't want to keep banging my face really hard, I need to learn from this and figure out some other way forward.
For sure.
So you're kind of known for the team framework. Explain the team framework. Give us a quick overview of the team framework for those of the listeners that may not be familiar with it. Then I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that.
With pleasure. Look, what happened is that, as I said, during my sort of travels, as I moved from one continent to the next, and then sometimes obviously transitions from one organization to the other, I very quickly realized that one of the things, and trust me, initially I thought, well, hold on, this isn't a good thing. What is wrong with me, right? I was always given what appeared to be a problem child. And when that started to happen, I wasn't sure whether I attracted all the negativity or whether, there was something else associated behind that particular trend. And then very quickly, I started to realize that, this isn't a bad thing. This is actually a good thing, because there has to be a high level of trust where, I'm being asked to fix things, right? And to get it done. So one of those reasons, or one of those occurrences, actually about 10, almost 11 years ago, I moved across the pond from the UK into the US. And I was given a task of trying to fix and trying to turn one of the, I'm not going to say profitable, but one of the business units with the highest opportunity that it had. Unfortunately, it wasn't performing. It had a whole bunch of disgruntled employees. It wasn't firing on all cylinders. And as I started to get deeper and deeper into it, I started to realize that in my head, I had the blueprint, but there's a problem with it. When you're trying to explain it to somebody, or you're trying to leave something behind, which as I got older became more and more important in my life, I realized that there is a framework or a methodology behind my madness in terms of how I try to do things. And I sat down one day, and as I started to play with the ideas and look at, the items that are associated behind my plan, I very quickly realized that there's an acronym behind it, and it just happened to be TEAM. And TEAM stands for, really, there's 4 key principles to TEAM, but there are also 4 surrounding pillars behind it, right? So if I just very quickly sort of digest that, T stands for talk or communicate. I know it sounds pretty basic and rudimentary, but you'd be surprised how many organizations actually go through the entire existence without properly communicating, both internally and externally. And for me, communicating and over communicating something became the linchpin of success going forward, right? I very quickly, as a young child, also realized that as I was moving from one country to the next and not having been able to maybe speak all the languages that I could, that communication aspect ultimately gave you the level of comfort of, or maybe, a different result in terms of, well, I need to know how to communicate, not only verbally, but also, in terms of visually, from a body language point of view. So there are many tracks to team and to talk and to communicate. E stands for evaluation. And in other words, inspecting what you expect. I think it's wonderful that sales leaders have the ability, the gift of the gab, to be able to stand up in front of people and to be able to communicate what they want to do. But the reality of it all is that only takes you that far. You have to have the insight. You have to have the backup information to be able to then communicate accordingly, right? So that quantifiable information, the ability to take the analytics and to assess it and to present it in a format that is digestible to the right environment became critical, right? The A is for action. It's as simple as that, right? Without an action plan, without the sort of lag and lead measures that lead to the evaluation, that lead to communication, it's just a pipe dream. So the actionable items, you need an action item that an action plan that actually takes you through it. And I think M for me is the most important. It's the mentorship, because I'm not talking about training somebody. How many training sessions have you been through, Chris? You sit down, they teach you something, or they train you on something. You walk out of there and you're like, oh, I forgot all of that. So it's really taking somebody and mentoring them through either to where you want them to be from a career point of view, or where you want to take them from an achievement or a desired goal point of view, right?
Yeah.
So that's the team framework. And then I talked about the key pillars, if you like, that surround it. And really they have to go hand in glove with team. Consistency. Consistency is most probably one of the key elements, right? So often people communicate and then they leave it alone, and they come back 6 months later, or they don't do that. It's like if there's a lack of consistency, it becomes extremely difficult for people to actually attach themselves to that particular plan. The second one is simplicity. There's really, if you can't explain it in a simple way, the chances are that you don't know it. And if you don't know it, how do you expect somebody else to talk about it or to be aware of it? The third one is focus. I am not a believer of multitasking. I have fallen on my face as a result of trying to multitask in multiple areas. And I think for me, focus is, especially when it comes to key KPIs, the narrower the focus, the more achievable it is. And the more achievable it is, the more it spurs enthusiasm and progress and momentum. And then the fourth one really is the culmination of all of them, and that's discipline. Because when you are consistent and you are simple in your messages and you do focus, it becomes a discipline. And once you have that discipline, team really comes into its own.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. So if I'm a sales leader, I'm listening to this, how do I leverage the team framework to be successful? What are some actionable things I should be doing as a sales leader to implement the team framework and really help not only make me successful, but make my team, TEAM, successful?
Yeah, look, I think the thing behind team is that it is, although it's a repeatable and a consistent model and a framework, the reality of it all, it's not something that I would expect anybody to repeat verbatim per se. So what I mean by that is you've got to inject a huge amount of your own personality into this, right? Because Chris, your communication style is different to mine. And the minute you start to communicate in a different manner, people are going to go, well, what's going on here, right? So whether you start at the T or whether you start at the M, it doesn't really matter. What is important is that when you look at those four foundations, sometimes what you've got to do, especially when you're coming into a new function, when you're talking about this 30, 60, 90-day plan or rollout, you might have to start with the E. In other words, the evaluation. Spend as much time on inspecting what it is that you are expected to deliver, right? So look at the analytics, communicate with the team, but not really to verbally make a statement as much as it is to ask the right questions, right? And then once you have all of those things, then put an actionable plan together. So I would say, depending on where you are within your career or within your particular function, you've got to assess which letter you start off with and how you take it forward.
I think that'd be especially helpful to someone who's coming into a new role, new position, to really utilize this framework to it's tempting to jump right in and say, hey, I immediately want to start changing things. But that's a great way to fall on your face. If you spend that time evaluating, asking questions, having those conversations to make sure you truly understand what's going on, and start building some trust and some relationships like you were talking about, earlier as well, you're going to be you're giving yourself a much better probability of success doing it that way versus, jumping in immediately. I'm going to start putting my fingerprints all over this organization.
Yeah, it's extremely rewarding. Look, it's like any qualification framework, right? So let's say you look at frameworks or qualification frameworks or methodologies and whatever. Sales in the sales industry, we've got a lot of those. We got the BANT, we got the CHAMP, we got MEDDIC, we got MEDDIC. You got all of those things, right? And then as you get deeper and deeper into those, you start to realize that they are really there to govern your way of thinking, at least initially. And whilst they apply more maybe to the younger or the early in career sales, so that, they start to think about it that way, as you're moving through your career, you start to realize that you're already automatically doing that. And the same with team. I'll never forget, I would arrive at one of our offices in Arizona, and the sales directors that were looking after that particular division actually had team printed out on a piece of paper, and it would be visible to everybody in our team. And it gives you a sense of joy and a sense of pride. But more importantly, when we talk about those things, everybody's aligned. Everybody knows what we're talking about, and everybody sort of buys into this. And that's important.
I think it's really important as a leader, whether you're a sales leader, any role, leadership role, alignment of your team, getting everybody working together to go in the same direction is critical to driving success. If you're not creating that alignment, you're going to struggle.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So is this a framework that is evolving?
I think it's a framework that will always evolve. And it's like any other framework. It needs to be a live document, especially as if you're choosing to adopt it, you're injecting your own personality into it. And the minute you start to do that, you start to realize that your communication style changes as you get more older or wiser or whatever it is that you're doing. And the same happens with all of them. The way that at the moment, if you haven't heard of, AI, I don't know which rock you've been living under, but AI is injecting a huge influence on the inspection, on the so evaluation.
Right.
So being able to take that critical data and then evaluate it in the most appropriate way, because that's all it is. It's taking a huge amount of data and siphoning it through to a digestible format. So for me, team will always evolve. And I'm not precious. And if anything, I would say quite the opposite. I would become extremely proud of the fact when somebody takes that framework and then evolves it into something else that works for them. Because, it gives them that opportunity to actually have those initial discussions and then ultimately to create that alignment that we're talking about.
Yeah. What do you see in terms of maybe over the next 3 to 5 years, the impact of AI having on just how we sell?
Oh, wow. I was having this very same discussion with somebody just the other day. And I'm going to leave you with a thought. So here's AI is evolving at a speed of knots, in such a pace that, it's sometimes difficult to fathom it. Like just this week, ChatGPT 5 was launched as a prime example, and it's got all the additional benefits and a whole bunch of functionalities that you didn't even think about. I remember growing up as a young boy and watching, you might remember this or you might know, I might age myself. There was this show called 1999.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a sci-fi sort of a series, and it talked and people moving into space and whatever. And when I looked at those things, it seemed so far into the future, like it was just not attainable. It was so far ahead that we were never going to get there.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, I'm starting to look at sci-fi movies, and it's like it's closer to reality than it has ever been.
Yes.
So I think we're accelerating at such a fast pace that trying to determine what AI will and will not give us is extremely difficult. But I promised you a sort of controversial thought. There is this thing called the kill switch theory, if you like, right? So the question that I would have for you and maybe for the listeners to ponder on, and I'm going to answer it, but then I'm going to elaborate on the question a little further, right? So if you think about it this way, if AI becomes self-aware and you have the switch and you switch it off, is it murder? And immediately you would go, no, it is not murder. But then I have a follow-up question for you. If according to the law books, murder is, and it's defined in a certain way, and those law books are written by humans, what if the law book is written by AI and passed into existence? Does it then constitute murder?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think we're going to have to answering that question in not too long, because the pace of AI is not like anything I've ever seen. I've been having these conversations for months now, numerous videos, podcasts, webinars, etc. That's the one thing that I think there are a segment of the population, we understand this, and there's a whole nother segment that has no idea. The pace of it is truly like nothing I've ever seen. And, we used to think in terms of decades, like, hey, it's going to be 10 years and it's going to be totally different 10 years from now. It's going to be totally different 2 years from now with AI.
Oh, without a doubt.
Again, like things we haven't even thought of now that we're not even considering, like, as possible, it's going to be possible with AI.
Oh, without a doubt. And then
it truly, I think, is going to be transformative in terms of how we sell, especially when we come to the selling tech, the tech that we've been relying on for so long to help us sell. Traditional CRM, in my mind, is dead. It's just a matter of, how many more years is that heartbeat going to keep going? It's going to evolve into something totally different from what we're used to today. And with that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Majority of the times, Chris, I mean, what happens is like, the customers have become more educated on your own product.
Yeah.
In some cases, they are way better educated than you are, right?
Yeah. That's what I tell people all the time. Say, look, if you're not leveraging AI, you're behind, because I guarantee you your customers are, and they're using it to get far more educated and through their buying cycle than they ever been before. They're going to come to you extremely well educated because they're leveraging AI to figure things out and help guide them in a way you never could do it before.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So CRM, do you love it or do you hate it?
Love or hate relationship. I think I would love to tell you that it's one or the other, but I absolutely do believe that it's a little bit of both. Yeah. It is the necessary, should I call it necessary evil? There it is. It came out. It is absolutely a crucial part of relationship management, if you like, for an organization, to be able to capture the historical data, to be able to capture the legal aspects of it, or whether it is just to be able to assess the validity of an opportunity and where you are with it. The truth is that, especially for a larger organization, CRM is absolutely a must.
Yeah.
the evil part of it, or maybe the difficult part of it, is when it becomes too cumbersome and too complex, and people see it as a deterrent rather than an opportunity.
Yes.
And I've used many different CRMs across the board. Not only Salesforce, but we're talking about Heat and Goldmine and things of that nature. But the minute it becomes, as I said, a little too cumbersome or too difficult, or it becomes a pain, or where there's a stick behind it,
yes,
right? That's when CRM, unfortunately, I think, gets a negative association behind it. Truth of the matter is, CRM is also a critical part of the E in team, which is the evaluation part, especially when you can start to plug analytics behind it to draw the opportunity, because it gives you that sense, that single screen or pane of glass, if you like, that tells you exactly where you think you are, where you think you should be, and how to bypass or how to overcome the challenges that you're seeing. So use it 100%. Do I support it? I do. But as I said, I have seen it in times where it's just become too complex and too difficult for end users to use.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I've been saying that stuff, and it was listened to, regular listeners of this podcast has heard me say many, many times that when it's done right, it's an incredible vehicle to drive growth, but there's so many ways to do it wrong, especially, when you're using it as that stick, that tool to enforce whatever. You're never going to get out of it what you're hoping for. Marek, we're at our time here in Sales Lead Dog. It always goes by so fast. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to reach out and connect with you, if they want to learn more about the team framework, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think you've already mentioned it. I am fairly active on LinkedIn, and I would strongly encourage anybody that wants to reach out, discuss, or talk about it. Yeah, follow, connect. Happy to grow the network, if you like, and create a mutual benefit.
Yeah, that's great. So if you didn't catch any of that, no worries. We will have it in our show notes. You can get that at impellercrm.com/sales lead dog, where you'll get not only this episode, but all our 150 plus episodes of Sales Lead Dogs. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to subscribe. That we really appreciate that. So you get all our future episodes as well. Marek, thanks again for coming on the show, and welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Pack.
Thank you. You're building a meaningful platform. I'm honored to be part of it. Thanks again.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.